Mike, what's going on, man?
Well, big night at the ballpark. If you're going to be excited for the Phillies any night, I guess this would be it.
Well, I was trying to think about this. When's the last time the Phillies called up anybody that, as a fan, you could get this excited about? It might be when Dominic Brown arrived, right? I know that Maikel Franco was up last year. Now, I mean, in a year where there hasn't been a whole lot to watch, you've got something that really matters going on out there every night.
Yeah, 2010 is when Brown came up. I kind of was talking about that in the first hour, Jay. Is when he came up, though, it was a little different situation. There was a lot of injuries, and they kind of just had him fill the void for a month or so, and then they sent him back. And that started the process of him getting yo-yoed back and forth. But Franco's here to stay, and I guess the first question would be, is, in your mind, Franco a big, is he a franchise type of player, middle-of-the-lineup guy that, they're really counting on to be a big-time player for them?
Well, I think he has a chance to be a star, and, the tools would tell you that. If he does turn out to be a star, he'll also be an incredibly popular player around here because he's got an effusive personality, incredibly energetic and likable, and loves to play, loves to be out there, all the stuff that Philadelphia loves. It's funny, there's been a lot of talk about his bat. I think all you need to know is the departure of Cody Asche to know this guy's an outstanding defensive player with a great arm and great feet. He's not fast, but he's very athletic at third base. We got a taste of that last year, and he will make plays, some unorthodox plays that you don't see made a whole lot. So that part's going to be fun. Now, the part that's going to be a real work in progress is the bat. Now, you would never know that from looking at his AAA numbers. 355 with 12 homers and a 539 slugging percentage. I mean, a guy who does that is ready for the big leagues, quote unquote. But is he ready to produce in the big leagues? I think there are real doubts about that. He went 20 consecutive games without a walk until the other night, 20 in a row. And he can't do that in the big leagues. That was what we saw last year. He swung at 44% of pitches outside the strike zone when he got to the big leagues last year. And big league pitchers will exploit that in a big way. So he's going to have to control more at bats, but it's going to be fun to watch.
I find it interesting. They sent Cody Asche down to go play left field. And the obvious question would be, they didn't see this coming. They didn't send him to winter ball or, put him out there in spring training. What if Cody Asche was hitting? What if he was hitting 330? He got off to a great start. Would they send him down if he was hitting 330?
That's a really interesting question. This whole thing has been handled oddly, but his friends on that club will point out that he was hitting until they told him it was time to start working out in left field before games. And that's when he went into that 2-week tailspin, right? So this might not be an unrelated development. You raise a great point, though. They have known for a long time that sooner or later Maikel Franco was going to be the third baseman, and almost certainly at some point this year. So, all right, if they didn't want to play him, send him to winter ball, I understand that. How could he not have played one inning in left field in spring training? Not one inning.
Now, Profrock said on Wednesday they didn't want to muddy the waters down there. I find that to be a little weak, don't you?
They didn't want to muddy what waters?
I guess by making it awkward, by telling him to play left at spring training. That just doesn't make any sense. And they said they didn't want to put him in the spotlight of having to play left field at the big league level. That's why he's at the minors right now. But if he was hitting and he had played in spring training, wouldn't he already be ready to go play left field?
I don't know if he would be ready to play left field
and
in
what's
the
the
big
difference,
leagues,
really?
Trying to win the World Series, but I've heard this rationale before that they didn't want to distract him from the job of getting ready to be the third baseman for however long he was going to be the third baseman, and they didn't want to create a sideshow in spring training. And I can understand, I get guess why they would come to that conclusion. But what is spring training for? Spring training is a time when you look over the horizon and you try to prepare for what's ahead. And there were people talking in spring training. I wasn't there that much, but when I was in Phillies camp this spring, people were talking then about how eventually Cody Asche was going to have to move to left field. And so why would you not prepare him then for this? I don't know. That's one of the really odd parts about it. Now, here's a second thing that I don't understand. How could they not have presented this whole idea to him in a way that allowed him to buy into his future career path? You know, the Phillies like this guy. His teammates really like him. He's one of the players on this team who puts everything into every day he spends in the big leagues. So shouldn't somebody have gone to him this winter or at least this spring and said, hey, this is where this is leading, and let him take some ownership of where it was going instead of mugging him with this after a game in a way that clearly left him shocked and angry?
Yeah, and another thing that ProFrock said that I kind of scratched my head at a little bit, they kind of justified it by saying, well, we brought Franco up last year. He didn't do well. He didn't do well in spring training, so we knew Asche was going to have to play. But what if Franco came up in spring training and he hit 380? So then how would you justify not having Asche? I just don't understand how they didn't say, look, this kid is going to play third base no matter what. You're going to have to start playing left field, and now's the time to do it. You know, you're going to take 100 balls at third base, and you're going to take 100 fly pops in left field. To me, it's almost unfathomable that it got to this point.
It's odd. Now, look, Maikel Franco had a terrible spring. Mm-hmm. It was apparent really early on that they weren't going to open the season with him, and that was for baseball reasons and business reasons. Right? We've gone through the business reasons now a couple different times on this show.
Sure.
The reason that they waited till today to call him up was, at least in large part, business reasons. But when they were drawing up the blueprint for where they were heading, didn't that blueprint say your third baseman of the future, and almost certainly the very near future, was Maikel Franco? If it did, and it clearly did, then spring training was the time to start this.
No doubt.
And you could easily have, by handling it the way I just suggested, going to Cody Asche and saying, this is what's going to happen at some point. How do you think is the best way to handle it? What would you like to do to transition into that role, Cody? We like you, man. We believe in you. We want you to be a part of the future. So we want to make this work for you and us. And if you do it that way, why is it a sideshow? Why is it a circus? I don't see it.
Another question, Jayson Stark's with us. He's powered by Team Nissan, the spot where the checker flag drops on Delsey Drive in Vineland. Do you look at Asche as a major league left fielder? Forget whether he can defend out there. Is his bat a corner outfielder so that long term, is he a major league left field producing type of guy?
That's a really valid question. I mean, if we haven't seen that bat, that sort of prototype corner outfield bat yet. Now, I talked to Larry Bow about this the other night when I was at Citizens Bank Park, and he tried to compare Cody Asche moving from third to left to Alex Gordon of the Royals moving from third to left. And, hey, if that's how this works out, they got a star. Alex Gordon's the best left fielder in the American League, so nice going. And it is true that he showed more power after he moved to left field, and he really mastered the position defensively. He was better out there than he was at third base. Those things are true, but I like Cody a lot, and I do think Cody has the ability to be part of wherever they're going. But is he going to be the best left fielder in the league? I think that would be a stretch based on what we've seen, don't you? I
really do, and that's another thing that makes me scratch my head is if 2 years down the line, are you saying, well, this guy's a 15-homer guy, we need more production out of our left fielder? I don't know what you do with him. I mean, they said, and they were clear that, and as you did, Franco's a superior defender. That's why he's not getting moved, because he's a better defender. So it almost looks like Asche's the odd man out, and what do you do with him?
Well, before we get to that point, let's try to think about what happens when Cody Asche masters left field, or whenever they decide he's ready to return to the big leagues and play left field. And I think it's a valid question why he's not doing that now. There's a lot of stuff going on that team that indicates that the record of the team in the big leagues this year is not a real compelling reason for anything they're doing, right? And so I'm assuming that they don't want to embarrass Cody Asche by having him learn on the job, but I'm not sure how much difference that makes. The one thing is they go to Colorado next week, huge outfield, tough place to play, especially for a guy who has not played a lot of the outfield. All right, I'll factor that in. But all right, what happens when he comes back? Okay, he's your left fielder, so you have a third baseman playing left field. I'm assuming that Odubel Herrera will still be the center fielder most days, correct? So he was a second baseman until this past winter. So you'd have a third baseman to left, second baseman in center, and then
you were all right letting him embarrass himself out there.
Well, I don't think he's been an embarrassment. There have been some embarrassing moments. He did play there all winter. He did play there all spring, correct? And so at least he had some experience at it. But your point is well taken. And then right field, I guess, judging by the way it appears it's going to wind up, your rifle-armed right fielder will be Ben Revere, right? So where does that leave all these other guys? First big question, what about Dominic Brown? Mm-hmm. We talked about him a couple weeks ago, too, when they didn't call him up at the end of his rehab option, and they told him it'd be a good idea for him to stay in Lehigh Valley. Last I looked, he was hitting .236 with no home runs in Lehigh Valley. And I don't know, when I ask about him around the ballpark, it's incredible the vibe that you get. The vibe is he's going to be there until he has earned the right to come back. And he hasn't earned it. He hasn't come close to earning it. And, they say all the right things, but I don't know if you noticed, but the other day when Ryan Sandberg was asked about Dominic Brown and how he was doing, he turned the conversation to Brian Bogusevic and Jordan Danks so fast. It just made you wonder. So somebody doesn't fit here. And Dominic Brown looks like at the top of that list of guys who don't fit down the road.
Yeah, and he also, and this is another interesting thing about this, he's a left-handed bat, so is Asche, and so is Herrera. So you would have a full outfield of left-handed bats and Rivera is too. So now you got lefty, lefty, lefty in the outfield, not to mention Howard and Utley still hit lefty. So they still haven't really fixed that problem either with the heavy lefties in this lineup for the Phillies. It's a mess, and we'll see how it all plays off. But let's look at a couple positive things, if we could, one of which is the Reading team. And Aaron Nola, Zach Eflin down there, and it looks like that team might have some help. What are you hearing about some of the guys at the Reading fighting Phils?
Well, I was in beautiful Bristol, Connecticut yesterday for Baseball Tonight. Keith Law was up there. Keith, as you know, is our Scouts Inc. guy. And he likes some of these guys in Reading a lot. He's always loved Aaron Nola, and he remains a big Aaron Nola fan. The irony of the Aaron Nola situation is, his selling point last year at the top of that draft was probably the most big league ready pitcher in the draft, but then gets drafted by a team that doesn't want him in the big leagues. Has a vested interest in having him not get to the big leagues quickly because they need to control him longer, right? So that's why he's dominating in Reading now with a 2 ERA and 29 hits in 39 innings. The other guy that Keith really likes there on the pitching side is Zach Eflin. And Zach Eflin's not a big strikeout guy. He's not a strikeout machine, but Keith thinks that he's a bona fide middle of the rotation starter. And the third guy that I get the sense he really likes a lot is Roman Quinn, the kid who was a shortstop, got moved to center field to make room for J.P. Crawford, and is having a tremendous year, as I'm sure you know. He's got almost a 900 OPS and 16 steals. Can really run. Great energy. Great athlete. Could have played quarterback at Florida State. Could have played basketball. Had a chance to have a big time Division I college basketball scholarship. And I don't know where he's going to fit, but there's a guy who has a chance to be the center fielder down the road. So there are good things happening in the system if you're willing to look in Reading.
Jayson Stark's with us here, 97.3 ESPN, the Stark Report, driven by Team Nissan in Delsey Drive in Vineland. Ultimately, Franco up is going to be something to watch, I guess, but everything else is going to be the veterans, I would assume, moving forward. Now, Scott Profrock on Wednesday, he ended our interview by saying, be patient with us, we'll get this right. Do you think the Phillies deserve the trust of the fans? Are they doing a good job in this rebuild to this point to say, you know what, I like the direction this team's going. Yes, I will be patient with you.
Well, the empty seats tell you that there's not a lot of patience, I would say. And, the problem with saying we're going in the right direction is they haven't established that direction yet. And, look, you got a lot of smart, caring people that are trying to get this right. I understand that. But if they had done what the Braves had done last winter, basically just cleaned out everybody who wasn't going to be part of the future, made 10 trades, and even guys who were incredibly popular like Craig Kimbrell, see you later. Evan Gattis, see you later. The Upton brothers, nice knowing you. All gone. And yet you look at the Phillies and Ruiz, Howard, Utley, Hamels, still there. It's incredible. And the young players, Freddie Galvis is looking like he's a major league player, right? Odubel Herrera is interesting at the very least. Ken Giles, he's going to be the closer when Jonathan Papelbon goes. But are there a lot of pieces that you see on the field that say we'll be part of it when this team wins? Obviously not. And when you go to the system, there's just a handful of players who you can see being part of a winner. And so you can only judge that the answer to the question you just asked me by how does the draft go? What do they get for Hamels? What do they do at the trading deadline? What do they do over the winter? What do they do at next year's draft when they'll look like they're headed for the first pick? If you ask me that question in 13 months, it'll be a lot easier to answer than now.
All right, let's switch gears real fast and get some other things out there. Number one, heard you on Mike and Mike, and that was a nice little going back and forth between you guys out there, Jay. And you look at the tampering of the football in the NFL, and I'm wondering the baseball side of it. We had Mike Sealski on the other day who caught up with Kevin Gross. That was a great find by him, by the way, to talked about the sandpaper issue. He got suspended 2 games for that, 10 games, and he said, I don't know what the big fuss is. We're all doing this, but do you guys in the baseball world look at Brady as a cheater?
By the way, I think the whole Kevin Gross quote-unquote cheating incident was one of the all-timers, right? He had sandpaper glued to his glove. Like most guys are trying to figure out a way to get rid of it if somebody comes to look. He had it glued to his glove. So, that wasn't one of the great cheating escapades in Philly sports history. But the point I tried to make to Golick on Mike and Mike the other day was, I think that there is a fine line between quote-unquote cheating and athletes doing what they've done since the beginning of sports, forever, and that is looking for an edge. And again, it's a fine line that defines that difference. Let's take what happens in Major League Baseball every night. Pitchers going to the mound with pine tar on the brim of their cap, or sunscreen sprayed on their arm, or some kind of goo on their hair. All this stuff that they're doing to get a better grip, and nobody says a word, right? So even if it's against the rules, but it's part of the culture, if everyone is doing it, or most players are doing it, or the sport just looks the other way, is that cheating the same way that something like Deflategate is cheating, where the balls are being doctored in a locked bathroom and then there's an apparent cover-up when the quote-unquote crime is uncovered? That, to me, feels like cheating. If everybody is being allowed to quote-unquote break a rule, it's not the same thing. But Golick didn't want to acknowledge that.
Well, I know this thing's been going on from every different angle and every different way. It seems that everybody, the best of the best, they're all trying to get an edge, and maybe that's why they're there and we're here talking about them. They are smart enough and can figure out how to get that edge. I do want to get your opinion real fast. You guys, the Kluber game last night, 18 strikeouts. They take him out of that game, and I hate the pitch count. I can't stand the pitch count. Is it getting out of control?
Yeah, the pitch count police force needs to stand down. Okay, that was a complicated situation, right? He was a guy who was going for a no-hitter, gave up a hit. Now he gets to 8. He's got 18 strikeouts, 1 hit allowed, no walks, by the way, and 113 pitches. And the manager, Terry Francona, has been thrown out of the game. So if we assume that Terry Francona didn't make that decision, Brad Mills, the bench coach, former Phillies coach, is the guy who decided to take Corey Kluber out of the game. I think we both know that Terry Francona probably made that call, but their rationale afterwards, his quote was, "You can't manage with your heart." But my quote would be, you can't manage with that clicker where you're just counting pitches, because
I agree.
Not all pitch counts are created equal. Correct? That guy threw 113 pitches, and he faced 2 hitters all night from the stretch. There wasn't a single stressful inning. And don't you know that if he was going for a no-hitter, they'd have let him go out there? Well, there's 4 no-hitters a year. There have been 420 strikeout games in the history of baseball. I guess we'll never see one again, right? Because it'd be hard to strike out 18 on that few pitches.
I really, it's getting out of control. Jayson Stark with us here, ESPN.com, senior baseball writer, and I agree with you there. I was kicking everything last night. What are you doing? How are you taking this guy out right now? And if I was Kluber, I probably would make them drag me off the field.
Oh, boy.
All right, Jayson Stark every Friday here, driven by Team Nissan, where the checkered flag drops. Delsey Drive and Violent. Check out all of their pre-owned inventory at teamnissan.com. And we'll do it again next week with Jason here on the Sports Bash. Have a great weekend, Jay.
Thanks. Does this mean my pitch count just arrived?
You're at about 125.
All right. I'll go hit the shower. See you, Mike.